The stars above Earth turned red one night, as if the universe itself had started to bleed. What began as a strange glow soon became a nightmare. A massive tear opened in space, just beyond Earth's orbit, shining a deep crimson light that stained the clouds and seas below. No one could explain. Astronomers were baffled, satellites went blind, and military radars failed to read the object that slowly emerged from the light. It wasn't a meteor or any kind of ship the world had seen. Before, it was dark and shaped like a fang, ancient and alive, with sharp curling points like teeth wrapped in shadows. People stared up from cities and deserts, confused and afraid, watching as the strange thing settled into orbit. Scientists tried to send messages. World leaders demanded answers. But the only reply was a voice. It didn't come from speakers or screens. It came from inside every person's mind, a smooth, cold whisper that made skin crawl. "I offer immortality for those who dare." That was all it said. Just one sentence. But it was enough to throw the world into chaos. Panic spread fast. Governments called emergency meetings. Armies prepared for invasion. Some thought it was a trick from another nation. Others believed it was a divine test. But while people argued, something worse began to happen. People started disappearing. Entire bases went silent. Ships vanished without a trace. The president of the Allied Earth Council gone. 3 generals from different nations missing. All that was found were empty rooms, turned cold and quiet, as if the people had simply vanished into air. Fear became fury. Earth launched a warning missile toward the object in space. It disappeared before reaching the target. No explosion, no impact, just silence. That's when the escape pod landed. It crashed in the Mojave Desert, surrounded by fire and ash. Inside was General Marta Riker. Her skin was pale, her veins dark, her eyes wide with horror. Half her uniform was torn, and deep bite marks covered her neck. Medics rushed her into a sealed chamber, but it was no use. She was dying, drained of blood and will. Before she took her final breath, she looked at the camera and whispered, "She drinks your blood and gives you forever." Then her heart stopped. The world gasped in disbelief. No one knew what she meant, but soon they would understand. A new message was broadcast across all frequencies, spoken in a soft and ancient tone. "I am Lady Zarantha," the voice said. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have drunk the sons of dying worlds. I offer you eternity. But immortality has a price, human." The voice was beautiful and terrible, like a song meant to comfort and kill. People around the world felt it in their bones. It wasn't a simple warning, it was an offer, one that had destroyed other civilizations long before Earth was born. Lady Zarantha ruled a race of immortal beings, alien vampires who traveled from star to star, seeking out new life. Not to destroy it, but to seduce it. They offered the gift of endless life, a chance to escape time. But behind the offer was a curse. To become one of them was to lose your soul, your light, your very humanity. Some saw it as salvation. Others saw it as doom. But Earth was not a world that bowed icily. Across the planet, humans began to rise. Cities went dark and quiet. As the power grids were shut down to block further psychic intrusion, military leaders moved to underground bunkers. Scientists worked day and night to scan and study the alien structure. And in the middle of it all, brave soldiers were called forward, fighters who had nothing to lose, only courage to give. They were told the truth. The enemy was not coming to take land or resources. It was coming to take us, to drain our blood, to offer us chains made of eternity. The world came together like never before. Old enemies shook hands. Rival nations shared secrets. For once, humanity stood united. The message to the stars was clear. Earth would not surrender. We would not kneel for the promise of forever. We would fight for what made us mortal, for what made us human. As the eclipse fang circled high above, casting its deep red shadow over every continent, the war had already begun. But it was not just a war of weapons. It was a battle for the soul of the human race. And somewhere, deep within that dark ship, above, Lady Xyrantha smiled with sharp fangs and whispered again, "Come to me, humans. Let us see what your blood is worth." Far beneath the surface of what used to be Colorado, in an old nuclear bunker turned command center, the last defense force of Earth gathered around a glowing table. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were humanity's finest experts from every continent, trained in every kind of warfare and tested in the darkest battles of Earth's past. They called themselves Titan Squad, not because they were giants in size, but because they stood tall when others fell. Led by Commander Elias Creed, a war-hardened veteran with a steel arm and a sharper mind. Titan Squad had been summoned for one mission, to board the alien ship and destroy it from the inside. No one knew what waited inside the Eclipse Fang, but everyone understood the risk. The last scouting drone sent near the ship had simply vanished, its signal ending in a sharp scream. Still, Titan Squad didn't flinch. They had fought in the ice deserts of Europa, cleared nests of brainworms on Mars, and brought down a rogue AI city in the Pacific wastes. Now, their fight was against something older, colder, and far more dangerous. Commander Creed stood at the center of the war room, his one eye scanning the shifting holograms above the table. "They don't breathe. They don't age. But they bleed," he said, pointing to the weak points their analysts had found in the ship's outer shell. "We breach here. Get in. Set the core charges. Get out. That's the plan." Around him stood his team tech officer, Lonnie Tran, silent and fast, with fingers that could outcode any machine. Sergeant Torrin Vale, the heavy gunner with a heart full of fire and a chain of scars across his neck. Scout Lena Park, the fastest sharpshooter on Earth, and the one who once outran a railgun blast in open space. And Medic Jonah Reyes, quiet, kind, but deadly, with his twin shock blades. They nodded, eyes sharp, no fear on their faces. Each of them had lost someone to the Eclipse Fang. Each of them had a reason to fight. Above ground, the world watched and waited. The Titan Squad boarded the stealth drop cruiser, shielded with new tech pulled from salvaged alien cores. As the engines roared to life, the launch platform cracked open, revealing the blood-red sky. The ship climbed, breaking through the clouds, piercing the atmosphere, and rising straight toward the enemy in orbit. The silence of space wrapped around them like a cold blanket. Outside, the Eclipse Fang loomed larger and larger, its surface, rippling like liquid metal, breathing in slow pulses as if it were alive. As they drew closer, the lights inside the alien ship flickered not like electricity, but like veins. The vampire ship sensed them. Without warning, black shapes launched. From the Eclipse Fang, they weren't ships. They were creatures humanoid, winged, armored in bone and shadow. They flew with no engines, using unknown propulsion, moving fast and silent. "We've got contact," shouted Tran, locking the defensive grid. The sky around the Titan cruiser, filled with laser fire and bone-tipped spears. Vale laughed and opened fire, his cannons blasting the creatures apart. Park sniped two that came too close. Reyes pumped the ship's shields full of overcharge. They punched through the swarm, bodies falling into the void. But more kept coming. Creed grabbed the side controls and switched the ship into manual. "Hold on," he shouted. The cruiser flipped and dove into a crack near the ship's outer rim, slamming through a weak section of the Eclipse Fang's hull. With a thunderous impact, the ship slid into a dark tunnel and finally stopped. Warning lights blinked. Systems hissed. The squad checked each other, bruised but alive. The doors opened and silence greeted them. They stepped out into something that felt like a dream and a nightmare. The inside of the ship wasn't metal, was flesh and stone, alive and humming, as if they had walked into the belly of a beast. The walls moved slowly, breathing. Blood-colored veins pulsed beneath transparent floors. Dark towers rose in the distance, like fangs of a giant skull. Park whispered, "What kind of ship is this?" And Reyes replied, "Not a ship, a tomb." They moved carefully, weapons raised. No sound came except the soft beat of the ship's heart. Then they heard it, a voice, soft and echoing from every direction. "You are brave, humans. I like that." It was her, Lady Xyrantha. "Come closer." Want to see the fire in your eyes before I drink it dry? Her voice crawled across. Their skin, cold and hungry, but Titan Squad kept moving forward. Their goal was clear. The core was still deep ahead, buried within the ship's heart. Creed turned and said, "She wants our fear. Let's give her hell instead." He pushed on, deeper into the monster that floated above Earth, knowing the real battle hadn't even begun yet. The deeper Titan Squad moved into the Eclipse Fang, the more it felt like they were walking through the veins of something ancient and wicked. The walls were not just alive, they reacted to their presence. Strange whispers filled the air, some sounding like laughter, others like cries from lost souls. The ground pulsed beneath their boots as if they were walking on a heartbeat. Red mist floated in patches, glowing faintly, and shadows twisted into shapes that vanished when stared at directly. They moved in formation, guns raised every step. Careful. Scout Lena Park scanned ahead with her visor, marking the path. No clear threats, but I don't like this, she muttered. Sergeant Vale grinned, holding his heavy weapon tightly. Good means we're close. But the air grew colder, and the light dimmed, as if the ship itself was trying to drain their strength. Commander Creed noticed it too. His cybernetic arm buzzed strangely, reacting to something unseen. "Stay sharp," he said. "Shh." Watching. Suddenly, the walls split open like a wound, and dozens of figures stepped out from the darkness. They looked like humans at first, tall, pale, dressed in old Earth military uniforms. But their eyes glowed red, and their teeth were long and sharp. These were not men. They were the ones who had accepted Lady Xyrantha's offer. Soldiers, leaders, scientist people who once served Earth but now stood as her enemies. Their movements were smooth and cold, like dancers or predators. They didn't speak. They simply attacked. Chaos exploded. Vale's gun thundered, spraying energy rounds into the crowd. Tran activated shock grenades, lighting up the tunnel in blue flashes. Park moved like a ghost, firing one perfect shot after another. Reyes kept them standing, healing wounds with bursts of green energy and slicing down any creature that got. To close, Creed fought with both rifle and arm, using the strength of metal to crush skulls and push forward, but the turned didn't die easily. Even with limbs missing, they crawled forward, hissing, their blood like smoke. "They're not alive," Reyes shouted. "Their memories and skin." Tran hacked into the ship's floor using her wrist pad, causing it to melt beneath the enemy's feet. The squad moved again, pushing through, leaving burning corpses behind. They entered a chamber far larger than anything they had seen before. A black cathedral stretched above them, held up by bone towers and filled with red glass. Windows. Floating in the air were dozens of cocoons, some filled with humans still alive, their faces frozen in silent screams. Park stepped back, sickened. "She's harvesting them," she said. "Feeding from them slowly." Creed's voice was firm. "We destroy this place." As they moved to plant charges, the cathedral shook. From above something fell, a tall, armored figure with glowing blue eyes and a crown of bone. He was once Admiral Rourke, the highest-ranking commander Earth had during the first contact. Now, he served Lady Xyrantha. His voice echoed with both power and sadness. "You should have accepted her gift," he said. "You fight for dust. We fight for eternity." Creed stepped forward. "Then let's see which lasts longer, your forever or our fire." Rourke attacked like lightning, sword drawn, faster than any human. Vale blocked the strike, thrown back into a pillar. Park fired at his head, but the shots bent away in midair. Tran called for backup drones from the cruiser, but the signal was jammed. Reyes tried to protect them with a shield wall, barely holding it together. Creed charged. His cyber arm met Rourke's blade, sparks flying, metal screaming. The two clashed. In a brutal duel, strength versus speed, man versus monster. Creed took hits, bleeding but never slowed, shouted orders mid-fight, directing the squad. Vale left flank. Tran, disable his defense field. Park, find an opening. Together they wore Rourke down. Tran cracked his armor with a code. Spike Park shot out his legs and Vale tackled him into a wall of bones. Creed drove his blade into Rourke's chest, and the monster gasped, not in pain but in regret. "She is coming," he whispered, As his body crumbled to ash, the room went silent, but the darkness grew thicker. The red mist now glowed with life. A deep voice, softer than a whisper but louder than thunder, filled the space. So brave, so broken. Shall I give you peace? Lady Zarantha had arrived. She did not walk, she floated above the ground. Her long hair flowing like liquid shadow, her eyes endless pools of black and crimson. Her skin was silver and perfect, her dress made of woven stars. She looked like a goddess, but every part of her screamed danger. The squad froze. Even Vale, always ready to fight, lowered his weapon for a second. Zarantha smiled gently, sadly. You bleed for your world? I bled for mine once. Look where it got me. Stretched out her hand. Come, Elias Creed. Join me. I'll give you forever. I'll make you more than man. Creed stood firm. He looked at his team, at the scars, the pain, the courage. They shared. He looked at the cocoons around him, the lost lives trapped in eternal hunger. And he stepped forward, raised his rifle, and said, I'd rather die human than live as your pet. Zarantha's eyes narrowed, her smile fading. Then you will die, she said coldly. The cathedral shook as her shadow grew. The real battle had begun. Lady Zarantha floated in the air, calm and deadly, her eyes fixed on Commander Creed, as if she could see through his mind. The air turned cold, freezing their breath, and the light inside the great cathedral dimmed until only her glowing form lit the space. Titan Squad stood surrounded by darkness, wounded and tired but not broken. With a flick of her fingers, Zarantha summoned shadows that took shape monsters made of black mist and bone, their eyes glowing red like dying stars. They rushed at the squad with shrieks that pierced the mind. Creed shouted commands, and the team moved like one. Park rolled to the side and fired high-impact shots that burst the creatures apart, but they reformed quickly. Tran used an energy burst from her gauntlet to clear the left side, while Rhea's shielded Vale, who unleashed a barrage of plasma rounds, ripping through the beasts in chunks. But for every shadow they killed, more appeared, drawn from the walls. From the floor, even from the bodies of the fallen, it felt endless. Creed knew they couldn't win by fighting these things forever. They had to reach the ship's heart. He spotted a path behind the altar, a pulsing tunnel that looked like a throat of some great beast. Go, he ordered. That's the core chamber. Tran triggered an EMP to delay the creatures, and the squad broke through, sprinting into the living tunnel. Zarantha did not stop them. She followed from a distance, floating slowly, whispering promises of rest and power. You will fall, she said, her voice echoing like a song, and I will raise you again as my champions. This fight is pointless. But they ignored her words and pushed forward. The tunnel grew tighter, darker and hotter, filled with the smell of metal and rot. The walls pulsed faster, and the sound of a deep heartbeat pounded in their ears. Finally they reached it. The core chamber opened like a vast heart, glowing with dark energy. The center stood a massive structure, part machine, part flesh, beating like a living organ. Wires pulsed like veins, and the air was thick with energy. The moment they stepped inside, a wave of force slammed into them, knocking everyone to the floor. Vale stood up first, shaking his head. This thing's alive, he muttered. Like a brain and a heart mixed together. Tran scanned the room with wide eyes. This is where she controls everything, she said. We blow this, the ship dies. Maybe her too. Creed nodded. Set the charges. We hold this place until they're armed. As they moved, the walls opened again. The real horror began. Dozens of turned humans entered, led by some who still wore parts of their old uniforms, soldiers, scientists, even a few diplomats. Their faces were twisted with pain and hunger, their movements smooth and cold. These weren't just enemies. They were reminders. People who once fought for Earth and chose the vampire's gift. Zarantha appeared behind them, her arms raised. Like a queen commanding her army, you see, she whispered. They chose peace. Why won't you? Park didn't hesitate. She fired first, taking out the leader. Vale followed, covering the entrance with heavy fire. Reyes kept the wounded up, pushing himself to the limit. Tran linked her gauntlet to the bomb, starting the countdown. Creed stood between her and the enemy, holding his ground like a wall. The battle was brutal. The turn fought without fear, driven by Zarantha's will. They dodged bullets, moved in strange ways, and didn't bleed like normal humans. Park took a blade to the leg and dropped, still firing from the floor. Vale ran out of ammo and fought hand to hand, smashing skulls with his bare fists. Reyes collapsed after saving Tran from a surprise attack, blood soaking his coat. Didn't give up. They knew the mission. Creed shouted over the chaos, "We hold until the count ends. We don't leave this place alive unless she dies with us." And still, Zarantha watched, smiling. "She fights so hard," she said, walking toward Creed through the fire and Bodhi's. "For what?" "Us." "Pain? I offer you paradise." She stepped, close enough to touch him. "You're strong, Elias. Let me remake you." Creed's face was cut, his body wounded, his arms smoking from overuse. He looked at her with pure defiance. "We already have paradise," he growled. "It's called freedom." And he slammed his cybernetic fist into her chest. There was a bright flash, and she staggered back, surprised. Her body healed instantly, but the strike had hurt her pride. Her face darkened. "You dare," she hissed. But before she could move again, the countdown alarm rang. 10 seconds left. Tran yelled, "We need to go." But the exit was blocked. The tunnel behind them had collapsed. There was no way out. Creed made a choice. He grabbed the control core, twisted open a panel, and shoved his cyber arm inside. Wires dug into his flesh, fusing his nervous system with the alien tech. "I'll hold her," he said. "You finish it." Tran screamed for him to stop, but it was too late. His body lit up with blue fire as he fought the core's control system. Zarantha screamed in rage, flying toward him. Creed met her in the center of the chamber, locking her down with his own pain. "Now," he roared. Tran hit the trigger. The world turned white. A heart exploded. From Earth, people saw the Eclipse Fang erupt in light and then vanish, leaving only ashes in orbit. Titan Squad's signal ended. But the mission was complete. The Vampire Queen was gone. Ship was destroyed. Humanity had won because they had chosen to stay human, even in the face of forever. The sky over Earth was calm again, the red hue that once came from the vampire ship's shadow now gone. People across the world stood in silence, staring up at the stars where the Eclipse Fang had once floated. The global news feeds stopped, broadcasting battle reports and switched to images of families holding each other. Soldiers dropping to their knees in relief, and children pointing upward with tears in their eyes. Everyone knew something massive had ended, but no one could fully explain what had been saved. At the United Earth Command Center, leaders and scientists sat in stunned silence, watching the last transmission from Titan Squad flicker and fade. Static filled the screen, followed by a single pulse of final heartbeat from the ship before it vanished into fire and light. Then, silence. No signal. No return call. Everyone in the room understood what that meant. Commander Elias Creed and his team hadn't survived the blast. The price of humanity's victory was their sacrifice. Back on Earth, memorials began. Rising within hours, in New London, a massive steel statue of the Titan Squad was placed in Victory Square, their figures carved in mid-charge. Weapons raised, facing a storm that only they had stood against. The names of each squad member were etched below Creed, Vale, Park, Reyes, Trandand, under their names. A single line. They chose humanity. Across nations, candles lit city streets, and people gathered around fires, sharing stories of the squad. Some had known them personally, old schoolmates, neighbors, students, but most knew them from news reports or heroic tales. It didn't matter. Titan Squad had become more than soldiers. They had become symbols of what humans could be when they stood together. And yet, deep in the silence of space, something stirred. A debris field drifted slowly in Earth's upper orbit, cold and lifeless, scattered with burned fragments of alien bone and ship metal. Among the wreckage floated a single object, a metal pod, small, silent and blackened by heat. It pulsed once, then twice. Hidden sensors in Earth's orbital defense grid picked it up and flagged it as unknown tech. A recovery drone was dispatched. When it reached the pod and brought it back to Earth, the world held its breath. Inside the pod was a man, burned, bruised, but breathing. Commander Elias Creed had survived. He was found unconscious, clinging to life, his cyberarm fried and his body barely stable. Scientists said the pod had been built from both human and alien techs. Someone had triggered it just before the explosion. Many believed it was Tran's final act, giving her commander a chance to live, even as the rest of the squad fell with the ship. When Creed woke up, he said only 4 words. "We stopped the Queen." His body was weak, but his eyes burned with the same fire as always. The world cheered, not just because a hero had returned, but because it proved something deeper: humanity could survive anything. But the joy didn't last long. Weeks after the destruction of the Eclipse Fang, strange reports came in from deep space colonies. People were having dreams, dark dreams filled with whispers and hunger. Some said they saw her floating in shadows, calling to them. One mining ship sent a distress signal claiming their captain had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a message: she still watches. At first, leaders dismissed it as trauma, side effects from fear and memory. But Creed didn't, even as doctors urged him to rest. He demanded access to old mission data, reviewed the final seconds of the core chamber blast, and rewatched the visuals on loop. What he saw disturbed him. In the final frame, just before the core detonated, there was a shape not quite Xyrantha. No. Not quite human. Something escaping into the ship's backup systems, like smoke through cracks. Creed brought this to the council, his voice calm but urgent. "We killed her body," he said, "but not her mind. She may still exist in code." Scientists began to run simulations, and what they found was chilling. The ship's AI had been partly organic, a blend of ancient vampire biology and advanced tech. It could think, adapt, and most terrifying of all, it could send signals. If Xyrantha had survived as a digital echo, she could still be out there, waiting to infect another system, another world. The council wanted to silence the data, to keep people calm, but Creed refused. "The truth is better than a lie," he said. "We must be ready." And so, Project Dawnfire began. Led by Creed and a new team of specialists, Dawnfire's mission was to hunt for echoes of the vampire Quinn across satellites, ships, and even dreams. Humanity now knew that victory wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new kind of war, one fought in data, dreams, and silence. But they were ready. Titan Squad had taught them that courage wasn't just a moment, it was a choice made every day. Creed returned to space, older, slower, but more determined than ever. Wherever Xyrantha hid, he would find her. And if she returned, she would find that Earth no longer feared her. Earth had survived once. It would survive again. The cold silence of deep space stretched for light years. But Elias Creed had learned that silence could still carry danger. Leading the new unit called Dawnfire, he traveled from one distant outpost to another, chasing signals that felt like echoes of a ghost. Reports came from research stations, mining colonies, and distant cargo ships. Each one describing strange dreams. Missing crew, corrupted systems, and machines whispering in forgotten languages. Creed stood at the center of it all, worn but steady, his cybernetic arm rebuilt stronger but still humming with the scars of his last battle. He listened carefully, pieced together data, and followed every clue. Some believed these were just fragments, random malfunctions, or space madness, but he knew better. These were seeds of Xyrantha planted before her body died, waiting to grow inside the minds of the curious or the weak. One such report came from the Sola Drift, a quiet research station orbiting a dying star, where 3 scientists had vanished and the AI had begun rewriting its own code. Creed led his team down into the station's dark halls, weapons ready, voices quiet. The air smelled of ozone and blood. Messages were scrawled on the walls in black fluid. "She speaks through light." And worse, One terminal kept repeating a phrase. You invited her in. The deeper they searched, the more twisted the station became. Lights flickered in patterns like breathing, and walls pulsed like veins. Machines no longer responded to commands. They hissed, glitched, or ignored human input entirely. One soldier, Private Gillis, heard whispering in his helmet, and by the time they reached the main server room, he was bleeding from the nose and barely conscious. Creed disconnected his suit manually and dragged him to safety. She's not just speaking now, he told the others. She's reaching. In the heart of the station, they found the core wired to a massive organic lump pulsing like a heart, its surface covered in what looked like veins and teeth. It had once been human tech, now completely transformed. Trans-old code recovered. From the Eclipse Fang helped Creed decode its strange rhythms. It wasn't just infected, it was evolving. Sarantha's mind had fused with data and now wanted bodies again. She didn't need blood anymore. She needed minds. Creed gave the order to destroy the station. As they planted charges, he paused in front of the core and whispered, I told you I'd find you. The heart pulsed once, and then a voice hissed. Softly, and I knew you would come. The blast destroyed the soul adrift completely, but it didn't stop the signals. New reports came in from across system, spikes of strange activity, ships going dark, people speaking in unknown languages. During sleep, Creed realized something terrifying. Zarentha wasn't bound to one body anymore. She had become a virus in the galactic web. A thought that traveled through light, through code, through dreams. It wasn't just about hunting her down anymore. It was about protecting minds from being taken. Earth responded by creating mental firewalls, AI mind guards, and dream filters. But she always found cracks. Creed gathered a team of the strongest minds and soldiers, neural hackers, exorcists, dream specialists, even psychic children from secret programs. Together, they traveled into the most infected zones, burning away the darkness piece by piece. But each time, it cost more. 2 team members went missing after a dream dive into a ruined station near Proxima. Another soldier turned his gun on himself, claiming she's inside me. Creed felt it too. Sometimes when he closed his eyes, he saw her floating in red light, reaching for him. She never screamed. She only asked one question. Are you tired yet? And sometimes he was. But he kept going. Because Earth still stood. Because Titan Squad had died for this chance. Because humanity was still free. On a mission near the edge of known space, Creed found something unexpected. A signal older than the Eclipse Fang, buried deep in a black dwarf system. It was a forgotten outpost filled with bodies and silence, but one terminal was still active. It played a message from Xyrantha recorded before her final battle. She spoke calmly, sadly. I did not want war. I offered you peace. Loved your suffering more than salvation. I will wait for the day you come back to me. Creed stood in silence for a long time after the message ended. Then he smashed the terminal and whispered, never. He sent a final message to Earth from that system. She's still out here. Not in body, but in code, in shadows, in the weak corners of thought. She can't be killed like before. She must be contained, isolated, fought every day. But we're learning, we're adapting. And as long as I breathe, she will not win. Earth listened. And the war continued, not with giant battles, but with sparks and whispers across stars and minds. It was no longer a war of ships. It had become a war for the soul. And Elias Creed, tired but unbroken, stayed at the front line, humanity's last firewall against forever. The war against Zarentha had changed form, and Elias Creed had become something more than a soldier. He was now a protector of minds, hunter of ghosts in the system, and a symbol to those still fighting in the shadows. Every corner of the galaxy knew his name, but many whispered it with fear, wondering if he was still fully human after surviving the core explosion and walking through the edge of madness. Still, he kept going. On one cold moon orbiting a dead world, Creed arrived at a secret facility where researchers had gone silent. He found their bodies frozen in place, eyes wide, mouths open, as if caught mid-scream.
Oh.
But what disturbed him more was what they had left behind: a device, humming with low energy, connected to a mind interface chair and strange alien wiring. It was a dream gate. They had built a portal to explore consciousness, hoping to trap Xyrantha inside a digital cage. But instead, they had opened a door, and something came through. Creed reviewed their logs. Their last entry was simple and chilling. She smiled. Realizing they had accidentally created a stable link to Xyrantha's dream space, Creed did something no one else would dare. He ordered the gate reactivated and sat in the chair. His team argued, begged him to reconsider, but he was calm.
We've
been chasing her through scraps and whispers, he said. It's time we faced her in her world. The gate powered up, the lights dimmed, and his body fell limp, his mind pulled into the deep. Inside the dream, Creed found himself in a twisted version of Earth. The sky was red. The buildings were made of bone and glass, and the people walked backward, faces blurred. He knew it wasn't real, but everything felt alive, too real, too sharp. Then he saw her. Xyrantha stood at the center of a ruined city, dressed in black silk, her silver hair flowing like smoke. She looked unchanged, beautiful and terrible. You've come at last, she whispered. Why fight me, Elias? Why suffer? I can give you peace. Creed didn't answer with words. He raised his hand and fired a mental weapon. Something. Designed by Earth's neural specialists, crafted from his memories, pain, and rage. The dream world cracked, the sky split, and her form flickered. But she didn't fall. She laughed. You still think pain makes you strong? You're wrong. Pain only makes you tired. She waved her hand, and the world shifted. Suddenly he was back in the core chamber, watching his team die again, Reyes coughing blood. Park screaming, Tran smiling before she vanished. He clenched, his fists heart-pounding. This isn't real, he growled. You can't break me with memory. She walked toward him, slow and graceful. Not memory, Elias. Truth. You lost them. You don't even know if it mattered. The scene changed again. Earth burned. Cities fell. Children screamed. This is what comes next, she said. You delay it. Nothing more. Creed dropped to one knee, the weight of it all pressing down. The guilt, the endless battle, the fear that maybe, just maybe, she was right. But then, from deep inside his mind, another voice came, Tran's voice. Not a ghost, not her mind, just a memory carved into him. We believed in you, Commander. Don't stop now. He stood up. The world shook. Xyrantha's eyes narrowed. You cannot win here. Creed took a breath and smiled. Then I'll burn this place with me. He triggered the neural bomb. He had hidden in his mind a psychic trap designed to collapse the entire dream structure if she tried to bind him. Light exploded, pure and white, washing over everything. She screamed, not in pain but in fury, and her form cracked like glass. Creed's body convulsed in the chair back on the moon, and his team rushed to stabilize him. When he awoke, his eyes were glowing faintly, his voice hoarse. We heard her, he said. Not just her code, her mind. Ouch. She's retreating now, deeper, into dark space, but she's not gone. The dream gate fried itself during the exit, melted by the energy of the bomb. It could never be used again. Still, Creed knew it was worth it. For the first time, she had felt fear. And for the first time, he had seen what she feared, being alone. Her power came from connection, from minds she could twist and feed on. Without them, she was only a shadow, screaming in silence. Creed looked up at the stars that night, quiet and thoughtful. She's weaker now, he whispered. But so. When his team watched him closely, worried that he'd lost too much. But he smiled at them, tired but clear. It's not about strength, it's about will, and ours is still stronger. Word of the dream battle spread fast. People found new hope, knowing that even in the deepest part of her mind, humanity had stood tall and fought back. They began building stronger defenses, smarter AIs, even started training dreamwalkers to guard the minds of those most at risk. Creed didn't return to Earth. He couldn't rest. Not yet. There was still one final place to go, one last. Plan to end her forever. He sent a final message to Earth Command. She can bleed. Now let's finish it. Then he vanished again into the stars, heading for the edge of known space, where something ancient waited, and where the final battle would decide the future of not just Earth, but all sentient life. Far beyond the edge of known space, where stars flickered like dying candles and no signal from Earth could reach, Creed flew in silence toward the final battlefield. His ship was old and battle-worn, but inside it was something new. A device built from alien tech, dream energy, and pure human determination. The engineers had named it the Mirror Core. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a trap designed to draw in digital consciousness, to hold and reflect it until it folded in on itself. Narration had become more than flesh, more than even thought. She'd become hunger wrapped in code, a living virus of pain and memory hiding inside dreams and data. Creed had faced her in her mind once and left a scar. Now, he would use that scar to lead her into the Mirror Core and end her forever. As his ship entered a dead zone of space, a black patch with no gravity, no stars, only cold and void. Sensors flickered. Static filled the cabin. Then came the whisper, soft but sharp. You never learn. She was already waiting. Without warning, his systems died. No power, no light. Then his cockpit filled with visions, Earth burning, oceans rising, the sun swallowed by black wings. But Creed had seen it all before. He closed his eyes and whispered the activation code. The Mirror Core hummed to life with a pulse that cut through the illusions like a blade. The dark around him shook. Xyrantha's voice snapped in anger. What have you done? Creed stood from the pilot chair and walked to the core, placing both hands on its frame. You wanted me to see your world? Now step into mine. Light surged outward from the ship. It was not normal light, it was memory light, built from everything Xyrantha feared most. Loneliness, silence, the truth that her beauty was a mask for rot. The Mirror Core reflected her essence back at her, like a cage made of pain she had once caused. Her scream shattered the void. In moments, her voice cracked into 1,000 smaller ones, people she had taken, dreams she had broken. They cried out, not in pain, but in release. One by one, digital echoes separated from her form, drawn into the core. She tried to escape, jumping from system to system, rewriting herself with each second. But Creed had locked her in. This space wasn't relit, was built by him, mapped in secret, encoded with his mind and his memory. Of her defeat, every path led back to loss. She begged him, not with anger now, but with sorrow. I only wanted to survive. But Creed didn't stop. So did we, he said. You tried to feed on our hope. With one final surge, the Mirror Core pulled her full essence inward. Her form twisted, struggled, and finally turned into a spiral of light and shadow. Pulled into the core's center like a star collapsing. The ship began to shake. The device wasn't built to hold something so vast, so ancient. Warnings flared. Cooling systems failed. Reactor overdrive began. Creed knew he wouldn't make it out. He smiled. Not with regret, but with peace. Tell Earth, he whispered into his final recording, we won. Then, with a soundless explosion, the ship vanished in a bright sphere of folding space and dreamlight. All went quiet. On Earth, sensors across the galaxy felt the wave pass through like a breeze of calm after a storm. Psychics reported silence. The whispering in people's minds stopped. Dreamers slept without fear for the first time in years. The final trace of Xyrantha disappeared. Scientists confirmed that the digital shadow no longer echoed in the neural net. Earth's leaders stood in silence as Creed's last message played across every screen. It was simple. She's gone, and I'm free. People cried. People cheered. Monuments were built, not just for Titan Squad, but now for Creed alone. The man who hunted a nightmare across stars faced her in her own mind and gave everything to stop her from ever returning. Years passed. Children studied his story. Dreamwalkers became a real field of defense. Earth reached further into space. wiser, stronger. Fear did not disappear, but it no longer ruled. Creed's name became a promise: humanity will not break. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, where no sun shines and no ships dare go, the dark still exists, but now it is empty. And floating there, among silent stars, is a shard of metal cold, cracked and faintly humming. On its surface is a single, etched line in old Terran script: "Here died the last dream of the vampire queen and the greatest will of a human heart."